So in some ways, theatrical release is a kind of marketing tool.
Right.
And you will have some angry filmmakers occasionally
You'll always
when
have
they hire
angry-
somebody.
Some of you will be angry filmmakers.
And you will be angry at us because I mean, I just did a wonderful documentary, and I really hope people go on his website and buy it. It's a great documentary called Whatever It Takes. We were hired by him to do a service deal. Part of what we were trying, part of our deal was based on we would get a certain amount, we were paid up front a certain amount, and then if we succeeded in hitting a certain number of markets, each deal is different, each distributor does deals differently. And sadly, we could only get it into one city because the reviews weren't strong enough. And he was furious because he's like, well, I thought you said you were going to get it into these cities. I said, well, that's why we only charged you a certain amount, and then we got paid the rest based on the success of how far we could take it. Most people won't do that. Most service distributors will you pay them and you roll the dice, and if you come up snake eyes, you're screwed. And it's tough.
I think there's a conception, and I feel it myself too a little bit. I mean, we all have that sense of going to the movies, right? Of going to theaters and watching movies, and we all have and so when you make a movie, that's how you imagine people seeing your movie. That's how you grow up imagining people see your movies. But I mean, the reality is there's almost no metric in which that actually makes the most sense anymore. I mean, if you really want people to see it, you can put it out for free. You can have it on television. If you want people to see it in all these different places, there's the festival circuit. I mean, there's all these different ways, and almost in some ways the least efficient way is an actual theatrical release of your film. And yet it's still this thing that we all sort of cling to a little bit. So some of the smartest people I know, I feel like, are the ones who are the most format neutral. Who just say, hey, whatever makes sense for this project. If it makes sense for me to put this project on YouTube, it goes on YouTube. If it makes sense for television, it goes on television. If it makes sense for me to stand on the street corner and hand out DVDs, that really think about the project and how that project needs to kind of come into the world.
That's good. Sean, let's get you into the conversation a little bit. I'm feeling a little guilty. Can we talk a little bit about how the Academy chooses which festivals to support? Given that, I'm sure you have...
Let's talk about that.
I thought some of our
I'm more
panelists...
interested in this than they might be.
I still program, so I'm curious.
Well, first of all, I can, not from direct experience or knowledge, based on what I do, but, I can kind of back up what everyone up here is saying for all the different answers that they've given. Is that it's all pretty true, and it's also an example of that there's no one way to do anything in the film industry. I mean, there are so many different paths that you can take. Whether they're talking about the distribution, production, whether you want to be a screenwriter or anything like that. There's so many different ways you can go. As for the Academy, one of our objectives is to to support and to further the art of motion pictures, and so film festivals is one way that we feel is one of the best ways to do that, because film festivals are crucial to keeping a lot of independent film, and a lot of films that wouldn't otherwise get an audience through the typical Hollywood distribution system. That's the way that they can get an audience. There are a lot of festivals out there, so it's for us it's difficult. We can't fund everybody, and so for us it comes down to the types of programs that festivals are running, and that's usually what we look at when a festival makes a proposal. It has to do with a specific program within the festival. For instance, for the Cleveland Film Festival, we're supporting Women of the World, and and I think that's a good example of a type of program that we like to support. Because it's focused on films made primarily by women or with women empowerment type of messages, and that's something that certainly all the members of the committee that make these decisions, that they find it important. It's we need to support underserved filmmakers out there, because sadly, as as history has shown, the Hollywood and the mainstream marketplace haven't done it as well. And so, so that's an example of the type of programs that we'll fund, but it's not, it can run the gamut from, pretty much any minority type program is important to us because, like I said, it's about supporting filmmakers who don't typically have as many opportunities through the mainstream marketplace. We're also really big on festivals that bring in filmmakers to, or even people within the industry to talk to the audiences at the film festivals because removing that barrier where where there's more of a dialogue between the audience and the filmmakers and the distributors and the craftspeople. We think that that it only helps further people's understanding of the art of motion pictures, their appreciation of the art of motion pictures, and that's what's key. One of the things I was thinking when you were asking if it was difficult to get theatrical distribution, in my travels around to various film festivals that we funded, I noticed that theaters themselves are disappearing. It's become it's really sad in certain areas where independent theaters, smaller theaters, they're all disappearing, and they're all becoming megaplexes now. And typically, most megaplexes, are going to show Hollywood stuff. Some of them, like a Landmark or those kinds of theater companies, will show more independence. But it's either a case of a lot of it's just the business. A lot of like single screen theaters can't survive today. There's just not enough audience attendance for those theaters to survive, so they have to. Those ones will shut down, and I've seen it in Los Angeles. A lot of long-time single screen or two-screen theaters have shut down in the last few years, and that's a sad thing because with the megaplexes it's even 10 times more difficult to get in there because they want the ones that are going to have the big studios behind them to put out the big marketing campaigns that will bring the audience members in. So, and I've seen a number of cities where, that's all there is now. Everything that was, central to the city, all those theaters have gone away. You've got the suburbs and their megaplexes, and that's it.
And one of the key American markets right now that's really struggling is Los Angeles in terms of the number of theaters there. And there's a great article, if you can find it online, by a fantastic writer, Karina Longworth, about the dying of these theaters and the independent theaters. Theaters like the Laemmle theaters are struggling. There's no secret. And we're seeing numbers in LA don't even come anywhere near the theatrical numbers that they do in New York City. People are still going to the movies in New York City. I mean, Bill Cunningham, New York, which is a great doc, opened on one screen, was it $34,000, I think it did, its opening weekend?
It's
on one
showing
screen.
tonight.
It's showing tonight. It's a
It's
beautiful film, beautiful film. And then the next week, it opened on 3 screens, and it was still doing $23,000 per screen. That is huge for any film, but for a documentary. And that documentary those numbers came out of nowhere. And that's one of the few companies that's making money for their theatrical documentaries is Zeitgeist Films. I mean, they've had Last Train Home, Up the Yangtze, and they're seeing a great set of numbers. And they are an example of a company that is cultivating an audience and creating these great direct marketing campaigns. I mean, that film is I mean, I don't think anybody, I think we thought maybe if it did well, it would do 10,000 that weekend, which would have been a respectable number. But to see a number like that for a documentary is really hopeful. But in LA, that same movie will open at the Music Hall or the Sunset 5 or even at a Landmark, and it'll do $1,800 its opening weekend. It won't even come anywhere close.
Well, even the Los Angeles Film Festival, which used to be held in all these like one screen, these beautiful, huge one screen movie houses, had to move downtown into a megaplex. It was really sad because they were up in Westwood in this like beautiful area. It was like nice to walk around in and all this, and you'd go into these giant, beautiful theaters and see these like first-time directors who are being discovered see them on these giant screens, and it's, you know.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about some sort of up-and-coming film festivals, hot film festivals now. I mean, everybody knows like Sundance, Tribeca, South by Southwest, Toronto, Berlin. But I'd like to sort of go down the line and talk about some festivals that might not be as well known, but that are hot, that are interesting, and that might be more open. That might be more.
David should talk about himself. That's, I mean, that is one of the
probably one of the hottest.
We'll let you
most
talk about
important.
it.
Yeah, you guys can do
And
talk about some other ones.
but yeah, David, why don't you start us off?
Let's see. I guess contextually it depends on the kind of film you make. Obviously, I mostly look at docs and go to doc festivals. There's a great kind of up-and-coming fest in Camden, Maine, called the Camden International Film Festival. Has a really, really good energy about it. A fest that's been around for a while, and I think will still be around for a little bit longer, in Sarasota, Florida.
Yeah.
The Sarasota Film Festival is a really strong fest. What else? I mean, there's next to Cleveland and some of the other strong city fests. Denver has a really good city fest, and really worthwhile. I mean, I think there's something, again, real quick, big picture. Like, I'm a big proponent of like, if you are showing at a festival and you can't be there, think long and hard about why you're showing at that festival. The most important thing you will get as a new filmmaker out of showing your film at a festival is being there and meeting people and making connections and all of that stuff. And if you can't be there in person, and there's reasons you can't, figure out is it worth it. It may or may not be. I know people who send their film out to 1 million festivals and it shows all over the place, and I guess I'm just not that convinced that it does that much for anything. So my fest, we bring every feature filmmaker. We offer housing and food for every short filmmaker, and we try to treat filmmakers very well.
That's really nice, no doubt. That's not true everywhere.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Maybe.
Yeah.